The hum of Nebula 7 never ceased. Even at what was considered the station's night cycle, the distant throb of engines, the hiss of air recyclers, and the occasional clang of maintenance drones created a constant symphony of mechanical life. Lieutenant Kalen Vance, known to most as Kale, had grown accustomed to this symphony in the mere 72 hours since his arrival. He guided his neural-assisted wheelchair through the crowded central corridor of Docking Bay 3. The smooth whir of its motors nearly silent beneath the cacophony of alien languages and the heavy footfalls of beings far larger than any human. He felt their stares. He always did. Humans were already a minority on this frontier outpost, making up barely 7% of the station's permanent population. A human in a wheelchair was practically unheard of. Neural assist functioning at optimal levels, Lieutenant, the chair's AI informed him through his neural implant. Proximeter detecting 18 moving obstacles within a 5-meter radius. Thanks, Nova, Kale replied subvocally, the neural interface picking up the words he formed in his mind without him needing to speak aloud. Let's try to reach command without running over any important diplomats today. The last thing Kale needed was another incident report. His first 72 hours have been filled with enough bureaucracy to last a lifetime. Security clearances, neural interface registrations, living quarter assignments, and the endless suspicious looks from non-human security personnel who couldn't fathom why Earth's Defense Force would send a broken human to such a strategically important outpost. A blue-skinned Palaxian merchant nearly stumbled into his path, 8 arms laden with sample containers. Nova automatically adjusted Kale's trajectory without him needing to intervene. The merchant glared down with all 4 eyes. Watch path, Earth Dweller, the Palaxian growled in broken standard. Nebula, 7 not place for wheeled humans. Kale maintained a neutral expression and nodded politely. My apologies, he said aloud, having learned that most species preferred verbal communication to what they considered the creepy silence of neural subvocalization. As he continued toward the main lift, the whispers followed. Half a human, desk warrior, brain in a box. These were the kinder terms he'd overheard. 6 years since the shuttle accident that severed his spinal cord, and the prejudice never disappeared. It merely changed location. On Earth, he was a hero, a survivor, a brilliant strategic analyst who refused to be limited by physical constraints. Here, among the dozens of physically superior species, he was an oddity, a curiosity at best, a liability at worst. The main lift doors opened, revealing a group of Xylosian warriors. Kale instantly recognized their distinctive crimson skin markings and the ceremonial blades each carried at their hip. A species renowned for their almost supernatural agility, strength, and combat prowess. They moved with a fluid grace that made even the most athletic humans seem clumsy by comparison. Most of the warriors exited the lift, their towering 2-meter frames casting shadows over Kale as they passed. Only one remained inside, a smaller figure, though still considerably taller than Kale in his seated position. Level, a female voice asked as he maneuvered into the lift. Command deck, Kale replied, turning his chair to face forward. The Xylosian studied him with piercing amber eyes, her head slightly tilted. Her crimson markings were less pronounced than the male's, forming delicate patterns across her temples and jawline. Unlike the others, she wore the standardized dark blue uniform of the station's security forces rather than traditional Xylosian battle gear. You're the new human analyst, she stated rather than asked, her standard perfect, but accented with the characteristic Xylosian clicks. Lieutenant Kalen Vance, EDF Intelligence Division, he confirmed with a nod. And you are? Lyra Zreth, Security Division. She reached out and pressed the command deck button herself, despite it already being illuminated. Kale noted the unnecessary motion, a subtle way of demonstrating that she could perform physical actions he couldn't. The lift began its ascent. He could feel her gaze analyzing his chair, the neural interface visible at the base of his skull, the atrophied legs covered by his standard-issue EDF uniform pants. I didn't realize Earth sent disabled personnel to frontier posts, she said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Cale had heard variations of this statement countless times. He had a repertoire of responses ranging from diplomatic to scathingly sarcastic. Today, he opted for something in between. "My brain still works just fine," he replied with a tight smile. "And the EDF is usually more concerned with that part of me than the parts that don't." Lyra's expression remained unreadable. Combat efficiency is prioritized differently among Xylosians. Physical capability is essential. "Good thing I'm not Xylosian then," Cale said lightly as the lift doors opened to reveal the bustling command deck. Before Lyra could respond, a gruff voice called out, "Vance, about damn time." Station Commander Drayson was a stocky, gray-haired human with the weathered face of someone who had spent far too many years exposed to various alien atmospheres. One of the few other humans on Nebula 7, he'd been briefed about Cale's appointment and seemed determined to treat him no differently than any other officer, which meant with the same level of impatient irritation he apparently showed everyone. "Sir," Cale acknowledged, wheeling forward. He noticed Lyra exit the lift behind him, her posture straightening in the presence of the commander. "Zreth, good. You're here, too." Drayson nodded toward the Xylosian. "Save me having to send for you. My office, both of you now." Cale exchanged a glance with Lyra, whose amber eyes narrowed slightly in confusion. They followed Drayson through the command center, past rows of monitoring stations staffed by a diverse array of species. Cale felt the curious stares, but kept his gaze forward, maintaining the professional demeanor that had become his armor over the years. Drayson's office was sparsely decorated, the only personal touch being an old-fashioned paper map of Earth's solar system displayed on one wall. As the door sealed shut behind them, Drayson activated a privacy field, causing the transparent walls to opaque and a subtle dampening field to engage. "What I'm about to tell you is classified level 8, Drayson began without preamble, leaning against his desk. 3 cycles ago, our patrol cruiser Vigilant intercepted and disabled a Vraxian scout ship operating well within Alliance territory." Cale immediately tensed. The Vraxians, a highly aggressive species with technology that occasionally surpassed Alliance capabilities, have been an escalating threat for the past decade. "We managed to capture their data core before they initiated their self-destruct sequence," Drayson continued. "Our tech team has been trying to crack it, but the encryption is beyond anything we've encountered from them before." He turned to Cale. "Your file says you specialize in complex pattern analysis and cryptographic systems. EDF headquarters seems to think you're the best they have. Time to prove them right." Cale nodded, his mind already cycling through potential decryption approaches. "I'll need access to our most powerful computing arrays, and—" "You'll get what you need," Drayson interrupted. "But there's more. The data is highly sensitive. If the Vraxians learn we have it, they might accelerate whatever they're planning." He looked at Lyra. "That's where you come in, Zreth. You're assigned as Vance's security detail. Wherever he goes, whatever he needs, you provide it. And you make damn sure no unauthorized personnel get anywhere near his work." Lyra's face registered brief surprise before settling back into professional neutrality. "With respect, Commander, I'm a field operative, not a babysitter." Drayson finished for her. "This isn't a request, Lieutenant Zreth. This assignment comes directly from Admiral C.H. Thawne." The mention of the Xylosian Admiral, one of the highest-ranking non-humans in the Alliance, silenced whatever further objections Lyra might have had. "The Vraxians have been too quiet lately," Drayson continued. "Intel suggests they're planning something big, possibly against this station. If that data core contains information about their plans, we need it yesterday." He fixed his gaze on Cale. "You have 48 hours, Lieutenant Vance. After that, I'm transmitting whatever we have to Alliance headquarters, complete or not." Cale nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I understand, sir. Zreth, escort Lieutenant Vance to Secure Analysis Chamber 3. It's being prepped for this operation as we speak." Drayson deactivated the privacy field, the walls becoming transparent once more. Dismissed. As they exited the office, Cale could sense Lyra's frustration radiating from her in almost palpable waves. He waited until they were in the lift again before speaking. "I understand this isn't what you'd prefer to be doing," he said quietly. Lyra's amber eyes flickered to him. "My preferences are irrelevant to my duties," she replied stiffly. "I will ensure your security as ordered." "Well, try not to look too thrilled about it," Kale said with a hint of a smile. "People might get jealous of your cushy assignment guarding the half-human." Her eyes widened slightly at his use of the derogatory term. "I have not referred to you as such." "No, but you've heard others do it," he replied without accusation. "It's fine. I've heard worse." The lift doors opened to a lower level of the station, one dedicated to secure operations. Lyra led the way, her long strides forcing Kale to increase his chair's speed to keep pace. "This way," she said, turning down a corridor illuminated by harsh white lights. "Secure Analysis Chamber 3 has been isolated from a main network for your work." As they approached the chamber, a group of Draxian engineers emerged from an adjacent room. The insectoid species paused at the sight of them, their compound eyes glittering in the bright light. The desk warrior arrives. One chittered in heavily accented standard, loud enough to be heard. "Brain in a box to save us all." Another made a clicking sound that Kale recognized as their version of derisive laughter. Perhaps he will think the Vraxians into submission? Kale kept his expression neutral, having learned long ago that showing reaction only encouraged such behavior. To his surprise, Lyra stopped abruptly, turning to face the Draxians. "Lieutenant Vance is here on direct orders from command," she said, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonics Xylosians used when asserting authority. "Your commentary is neither required nor appropriate." The Draxians' antennae flattened, a sign of submission or embarrassment, before they hurried away down the corridor. Lyra resumed, walking without acknowledging what had happened. Kale caught up with her at the chamber's entrance, where she was already inputting security clearance. "You didn't need to do that," he said. She glanced down at him, her expression unreadable. Their behavior violated station protocol regarding professional conduct. "I would have done the same for any officer." "Of course," Kale nodded, not entirely convinced but unwilling to press the issue. The chamber door slid open, revealing a spacious room dominated by holographic display interfaces and neural connection ports. A Vraxian data core, a crystalline structure roughly the size of a human fist, sat in a secured containment field at the center of the main workstation. "This will be your workspace for the duration of the assignment," Lyra explained, following him in. "The room is secure against all known forms of surveillance. I will remain here while you work." Kale examined the setup, nodding in approval. "This will do, though I should warn you, watching someone decode encrypted data is about as exciting as watching paint dry." "I am familiar with observation duties," she replied, taking up a position near the door. Kale maneuvered his chair to the main workstation, engaging the neural interface ports. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding," he murmured to the Vraxian data core. As neural connection cables extended from the workstation, seeking the ports at the base of his skull, he glanced at Lyra. Last chance to request a more exciting assignment. Her amber eyes met his. "I will fulfill my duty, Lieutenant Vance." "Call me Kale," he said, as the neural connections clicked into place. "We're going to be spending a lot of time together." Before she could respond, he activated the interface. His consciousness expanded as the station's computer systems merged with his own thought processes. The physical world, Lyra, the chamber, even his own body, faded to background awareness as his mind dove into the digital realm. The Vraxian data core glowed in his mental landscape like a complex crystalline fortress, layers upon layers of encrypted code forming virtually impenetrable walls. Most analysts would approach it conventionally, testing known decryption algorithms against the outer layers. Kale didn't work like most analysts. He circled the digital fortress, examining it from every angle, looking not for obvious entry points, but for the subtle patterns that revealed the underlying architecture. Vraxian systems, for all their alienness, still adhered to mathematical principles, and mathematics was a universal language he spoke fluently. Time lost meaning as he worked, his consciousness flowing through digital streams, testing, probing, mapping the encryption structure. Distantly, he was aware of Lyra moving around the physical chamber, sometimes standing near him, other times pacing or performing what appeared to be subtle combat exercises to maintain alertness. Hours passed before he encountered the first trap, a recursive loop designed to capture and isolate any intrusion attempt. Had he been using standard methods, his consciousness would have been ensnared, potentially causing neural feedback severe enough to damage his brain. Instead, he recognized the pattern just before triggering it, pulling back and marking the location in his mental map of the system. Clever, he murmured, unaware he'd spoken aloud. What is? Lyra's voice penetrated his concentration slightly. Cale blinked, momentarily disoriented by the intrusion of physical reality. They've set traps, neural feedback loops that would fry a standard neural interface. Probably killed some of their own technicians during development. Can you bypass them? She asked, moving closer to observe the holographic representations of his work. Working on it, he replied, diving back into the digital landscape. The challenge was invigorating. Each layer of security he mapped revealed new complexities, new dangers, but also new insights into Vraxian thinking. Their logic, while alien, had patterns, and patterns could be decoded. 3 hours later, a system alert jarred him from deep concentration. Warning lights flashed across the holographic displays. What's happening? Then before, in case further assistance is required. Cale nodded, strangely appreciative of her presence as he reconnected to the neural interface. The Vraxian fortress awaited him, its secrets still buried beneath layers of digital protection. But now, he had mapped some of its architecture, identified key vulnerabilities, and, though he would never have expected it hours earlier, gained something resembling respect from his Ilosian guardian. It was a start. For the next several hours, Cale worked methodically through the Vraxian encryption, occasionally narrating his process aloud, partly to maintain his own focus, and partly because Lyra seemed genuinely interested in understanding the complex digital battleground he navigated. They've structured their encryption in triadic layers, he explained at one point, his physical voice sounding distant to his own ears while his consciousness remained primarily in the digital realm. Most systems use binary thinking, yes/no, on/off. The Vraxians think in threes. Every solution creates 2 new problems. Like the tri-horned predator strategy, Lyra commented unexpectedly. Cale's consciousness partially surfaced from the digital deep. What's that? A hunting technique from my homeworld, she explained, leaning forward her chair. The tri-horned Kether appears to present its central horn as the primary threat, but its true attack comes from the side horns. When you defend against one threat, you expose yourself to 2 others. That's exactly it, Cale said, surprised by the apt comparison. I've been treating each encryption layer as a separate challenge, but they're interconnected. Solving one impacts the others. This new perspective altered his approach subtly but significantly. Rather than attacking each layer sequentially, he began looking for interconnection points, places where solving one encryption pattern would weaken others simultaneously. Progress accelerated. By the 20th hour of their assignment, Cale had mapped nearly 70% of the data structure and begun extracting fragments of actual information. I'm getting something, he announced, projecting some of the decoded data onto the holographic display for Lyra to see. Ship movements supply line coordinates. This is major tactical data. Lyra stood, examining the fragmentary information with a warrior's eye. These coordinates, some are within half a light year of Nebula 7. They're planning something, Cale agreed, continuing to extract and assemble data pieces. Something big, judging by the resource allocations I'm seeing. But I need more. There's a central file that everything seems to reference, still locked behind the heaviest encryption. A soft alert tone sounded from Lyra's communicator. She checked it, her expression darkening. Commander Drayson is requesting a status update. Tell him we're making progress, Cale said, reluctant to disconnect from the system when he felt so close to a breakthrough. I need a few more hours. Lyra hesitated. He's ordered us to report in person. Both of us. Kale sighed, initiating a controlled disconnect from the neural interface. The cables retracted from the ports at his skull, and the digital world faded as his consciousness returned fully to his physical surroundings. The transition was always disorienting. He blinked several times, his vision momentarily blurred as his brain readjusted to processing visual input through his eyes rather than the neural feed. "Are you well?" Lyra asked, watching him with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Just neural feedback," he assured her, rubbing his temples. "Happens every time I disconnect after a deep dive session." He checked the secure time display. 22 hours straight. "No wonder I'm feeling it." "You should consume nutrients," Lyra stated matter-of-factly. "Human neural function degrades significantly without proper sustenance." Kale couldn't help but smile at her clinical assessment. "Is that concern I hear, Lieutenant Zreth?" "Tactical assessment," she corrected, but the slight softening around her eyes betrayed her. "Your optimal functionality is necessary for mission success." "Right," Kale nodded, still smiling as he maneuvered his chair toward the door. "Let's not keep the commander waiting." They made their way to the command deck in comfortable silence, a marked change from their tense first encounter. As they entered Drayson's office, Kale noted the commander wasn't alone. A tall, distinguished Kalanoy male in an Alliance admiral's uniform stood gazing out the viewport at the stars beyond. The gelatinous being's transparent outer membrane shimmered with the neural patterns that served as both communication and emotional display for their species. "Lieutenant Vance, Lieutenant Zreth," Drayson acknowledged their arrival. "This is Admiral Exor, Alliance Intelligence Division. He's here to evaluate your progress." The Kalanoy turned, his neural patterns shifting to what Kale recognized as formal greeting configuration. "Lieutenant Vance." The Admiral's translator rendered in perfect standard. "Your reputation precedes you. The EDF speaks highly of your analytical capabilities." "Thank you, Admiral." Kale responded with appropriate respect. "I appreciate the EDF's confidence." "Confidence is earned, not given," Exor replied, neural patterns shifting again. "What have you discovered from the Vraxian Corps?" Kale straightened in his chair, switching to formal reporting mode. "I've decoded approximately 70% of the data structure, sir. What I've found so far indicates the Vraxians are amassing significant forces in this sector, including positions disturbingly close to Nebula 7. Resource allocations, supply chains, and troop movements all suggest preparation for a major offensive operation." "Against this station specifically?" Drayson asked sharply. "I believe so, but I haven't yet accessed the central operational files," Kale admitted. "They're protected by the most sophisticated encryption I've encountered. With another 12 hours, I'm confident I can break through." Admiral Exor's neural patterns shifted to what Kale recognized as skepticism. "Forgive my directness, Lieutenant, but other analysts with full physical capabilities have failed to make any progress with this data core. Why should we believe you can succeed where they could not?" Before Kale could respond, Lyra spoke unexpectedly. "Admiral, I have observed Lieutenant Vance's work methods directly for the past 22 hours. His neural interface techniques are unlike any conventional approach. He doesn't merely apply algorithms. He engages in direct digital combat with the Vraxian systems." All eyes turned to the Xylosian, clearly surprised by her passionate defense. "And you believe his methods will succeed?" Exor pressed. "I have witnessed him overcome Vraxian defensive measures that would have destroyed most neural interfaces," Lyra stated firmly. "His progress has been methodical and significant. I believe his assessment of needing 12 more hours is accurate, possibly conservative." Kale tried to keep his surprise from showing on his face. Having a Xylosian warrior, especially one who had initially seemed dismissive of his capabilities, speak so confidently on his behalf was unexpected to say the least. Admiral Exor's neural patterns shifted several times, indicating complex thought processes. "Very well," he finally said. "You have 12 more hours, Lieutenant Vance. But be aware, if the Vraxians are indeed planning an attack on this station, every moment counts." "Understand, Admiral," Kale nodded. I'll work as quickly as accuracy allows. And you, Lieutenant Zreth, Exor, turned to Lyra. Your continued security presence is essential. We have reason to believe Vraxian operatives may have infiltrated the station. The data Lieutenant Vance is extracting would be a high-value target. Lyra's posture straightened. I will ensure his safety and the security of the operation, Admiral. Drayson cleared his throat. Get some nutrition and rest for at least 2 hours before resuming, Lieutenant Vance. I won't have you collapsing from neural strain before you complete this mission. Yes, sir. Kale acknowledged, recognizing an order when he heard one. As they left the command office, Kale felt a new sense of urgency. Vraxian operatives potentially on the station, a major attack possibly imminent. The stakes had just gotten considerably higher. The Admiral seemed impressed by your assessment, he commented to Lyra as they made their way to the officers' mess hall. She glanced down at him, her amber eyes unreadable. I spoke only truth. Your methods are effective. High praise coming from a Xylosian warrior, Kale said with a small smile. Do not mistake professional assessment for personal regard, Lieutenant, she replied, but her tone lacked the coldness it would have held a day earlier. The officers' mess was sparsely populated at this hour, occupied mainly by those working alternate shifts. Kale selected a high-protein meal designed to support neural recovery, while Lyra chose something that appeared to consist primarily of raw meat cubes. They sat at a corner table offering a clear view of all entrances, a security precaution Kale noticed but didn't comment on. For several minutes, they ate in silence, the events of the past day settling between them. May I ask a personal query? Lyra finally said, breaking the silence. Kale looked up from his meal, somewhat surprised. Of course. Your condition, she began, then paused as if reconsidering her words. How did it occur? It wasn't the first time he'd been asked this question, but it was the first time it had come from someone who'd spent hours watching him work, who had defended his capabilities to an admiral. Shuttle accident during a routine transport mission, he answered. Honestly, I was a tactical field officer before. The shuttle was hit by debris from a micrometeor strike near the Mars colony. Spinal cord severed at T10. He gestured to his lower body. Complete paralysis below the waist. Lyra nodded, absorbing this information. Yet you continued your service. In a different capacity, Kale agreed. The EDF invested in my neural interface training. Turns out I had an aptitude for it. The same focus that made me a good tactical officer translated well to digital operations. Among Xylosians, Lyra said carefully, those who suffer disabling injuries often choose ritual death rather than adaptation. Because physical prowess is so central to your culture, Kale nodded. I know. Humans have our own history of such thinking, but we've moved beyond it, mostly. He smiled slightly. Though clearly, prejudice persists across species. I have not observed your capabilities diminished by your physical condition, Lyra stated with typical Xylosian directness. In fact, your neural reflexes exceed those of any being I have encountered. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach. Before Kale could respond to this surprising admission, the station's alert system activated. Red warning lights pulsed throughout the mess hall as a computerized voice announced. Security alert. All personnel to stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Lyra was instantly on her feet, hand moving to her sidearm. We need to return to the secure chamber immediately. Kale nodded, already maneuvering his chair away from the table. Nova, station status? He queried his chair's AI. Station security reports multiple breaches in outer docking rings. The AI responded. Unknown hostiles reported in sections 12 through 17. Weapon fire detected. Vraxians, Kale muttered. They know we're accessing their data. They move swiftly through suddenly chaotic corridors. Lyra taking point, while Kale monitored station security feeds through his neural implant. 3 hostile groups, he reported as they navigated toward the secure section. They're moving with purpose, not random attacks. They're looking for something specific. Or someone, Lyra added grimly. As they rounded the final corner to the secure chamber, Kale's proximity sensors flared. Movement ahead. Three figures appeared in the corridor, Vraxian combat operatives in their distinctive bone-white battle armor. Upon spotting Kale and Lyra, they raised pulse weapons without hesitation. "Down!" Lyra shouted, drawing her own weapon in a blur of motion that Kale's human eyes could barely track. What followed was a demonstration of why Xylosians were considered among the most formidable warriors in known space. Lyra moved with a fluid grace that defied normal physics, her body seeming to float around enemy fire while her own shots found vulnerable points in the Vraxian's armor. Kale wasn't helpless either. The neural ports in his skull weren't just for data analysis. "Nova, combat mode," he commanded. His wheelchair's seemingly decorative side panels sprang open, revealing compact, defensive weaponry. Using his neural interface, Kale targeted and fired at the advancing Vraxians, providing covering fire as Lyra engaged them at close range. Two Vraxians fell to their combined assault, but the third managed to activate some form of personal shield technology that deflected both Lyra's and Kale's shots. "The chamber," Kale called out. "If we can get inside, I can lock down the security systems." Lyra nodded, engaging the remaining Vraxian directly while Kale maneuvered toward the chamber entrance, using his chair's weapons to keep the enemy's attention divided. The secure door was just meters away when Kale's proximity alert blared again. A second Vraxian squad had arrived from an adjacent corridor. "Lyra, behind you," he shouted. She reacted instantly, diving and rolling away from the new threat while maintaining pressure on her original opponent. But the odds had shifted dramatically against them. Kale made a split-second decision. "Nova, execute protocol blackout." His wheelchair suddenly emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse, temporarily disrupting all electronic systems in the immediate vicinity, including the Vraxian shield technology and weapons. In that moment of electronic chaos, Lyra struck decisively. Her blade, which Kale hadn't even seen her draw, flashed in the emergency lighting as she eliminated three Vraxians in sequence. Her movements so fast they appeared almost simultaneous to human perception. The remaining attackers, their systems rebooting, fell back strategically. Lyra seized the opportunity, grabbing Kale's chair and physically pushing it the remaining distance to the secure chamber entrance. She slammed her palm on the emergency override, and the door slid open just enough for them to enter before sealing shut behind them. "Their weapons will function again momentarily," Kale warned, already connecting to the chamber's security systems through his neural interface, reinforcing door security protocols and initiating level 1 lockdown. The chamber's lights dimmed as emergency power engaged. Heavy security shutters descended over the door and ventilation ducts, and a secondary force field activated around the perimeter. "That should hold them, at least temporarily," Kale said, his breath coming fast. The neural exertion, combined with the adrenaline of combat, left him feeling lightheaded. Lyra, barely winded despite her intense physical exertion, checked her weapon. Vraxian assault teams rarely operate without heavy support. They'll breach eventually. Then we don't have much time. Kale moved his chair back to the main workstation. "I need to complete the decryption and extract the data before they break through. Whatever's in this core, they're desperate to keep it secret." "The station's security forces will respond," Lyra noted, taking up a defensive position with clear lines of fire to all potential entry points. "Maybe," Kale said grimly. "But given how easily they infiltrated, I wouldn't count on help arriving in time." He reconnected to the neural interface. "I need to finish this. Can you hold them off?" Lyra's amber eyes met his with fierce determination. "I will ensure you have the time you require." Kale nodded, then plunged back into the digital realm. The Vraxian data fortress now appeared differently to his neural perception. More chaotic, portions of it crumbling from his previous work, while others reinforced themselves, as if the system sensed the urgency of the situation. He launched a full-scale assault on the final encryption barriers protecting the central data, leveraging everything he'd learned about Vraxian architecture. His digital consciousness flowed through the system's weak points, exploiting the interconnections he'd identified earlier. In the physical world, dimly perceived through his peripheral awareness, he heard the first concussive impacts against the chamber door. The Vraxians had brought heavier weapons. "They're using plasma cutters," Lyra reported calmly. "Estimate 3 minutes until breach." Kale didn't respond, couldn't spare the concentration. His mind raced through digital pathways, dismantling security protocols and bypassing traps with increasing speed. He was close, so close, to the core data. A final encryption wall stood between him and the Vraxian secrets. Unlike the others, this one seemed adaptive, shifting and morphing as he approached it. A dynamic defense system, one that learned from his techniques and countered them in real time. 2 minutes, came Lyra's voice, sounding distant to his ears. Kale poured every ounce of his neural processing capability into analyzing the dynamic defense. This wasn't just sophisticated, it was virtually alive, a self-evolving AI designed specifically to counter intrusion attempts. The usual approaches would fail. He needed something the system couldn't predict, couldn't adapt to, something beyond its programming parameters. Inspiration struck. If the Vraxian defense operated on triadic principles as he'd already discovered, then its adaptations would follow predictable patterns despite their apparent randomness. Each adaptation would create 2 new vulnerabilities. He just needed to find the right sequence. 1 minute, Lyra called out, the sound of weapon charging audible in the background. Kale focused, mapping not just the current state of the defenses, but projecting their next several iterations. Instead of attacking the system directly, he began feeding it calculated stimuli, data probes designed to force specific adaptation patterns. The defense responded exactly as he predicted, shifting and restructuring. With each change, it thought itself stronger, but was actually moving toward a specific configuration Kale was orchestrating, one with a critical vulnerability. 30 seconds. Kale waited for precisely the right moment, watching the defense cycle through its adaptations. When it reached the exact configuration he'd predicted, he struck, not with force, but with a precisely calibrated data packet that exploited all 3 points of the triadic structure simultaneously. The defense shattered. Data flooded into his consciousness. Tactical plans, ship deployments, target priorities. A complete battle plan for a massive assault on Nebula 7. The station was to be the first domino in a carefully orchestrated campaign to split Alliance forces and create a foothold in this strategic sector. But there was more, something unexpected. Secondary files containing detailed information on Vraxian command and control systems, communications protocols, and, most crucially, the command code for their fleet's coordination network. Breaching in 3, 2. Lyra's countdown was interrupted by the sound of the outer door beginning to melt under sustained plasma fire. "I've got it," Kale shouted, simultaneously initiating a data transfer to his secure neural storage while maintaining his connection to the station systems. Complete battle plans and, wait, command codes. Their entire fleet's command network. The door's integrity failed, molten metal dripping as a section began to give way. Lyra took aim, prepared to defend her last breath. Kale made a split-second decision. Keep them busy for 10 more seconds. As Lyra opened fire on the first Vraxian forces pushing through the breach door, Kale redirected his neural interface from the data core to the station's communications array. Using his direct connection and the newly acquired Vraxian command codes, he crafted a precisely formatted transmission burst. "What are you doing?" Lyra called out between precise shots. "Something they won't expect," Kale replied, his voice strained from the intense neural concentration. "Ready? Now." He activated the transmission, a cascade of falsified command signals sent directly to the Vraxian vessels lurking near the station. The signals mimicked their highest authority protocols, ordering immediate system resets and weapons safing across their entire fleet. The effect was immediate. Through the station's sensor feeds, which he monitored through a secondary neural channel, Kale watched as the Vraxian ships suddenly powered down weapons and shields, their command systems thrown into confusion by the contradictory orders. In the chamber, the assault team's communications suddenly erupted with chaotic chatter. Their networked armor systems, linked to the same command structure, began cycling through diagnostic routines, temporarily disabling their weapons and defenses. Now, Kale shouted to Lyra, "Their systems are compromised." Lyra didn't hesitate. She launched herself at the disoriented Vraxian assault team with lethal precision, exploiting their momentary vulnerability. Within seconds, she had neutralized the immediate threat, but they both knew it was only temporary. "We need to get this data to command," Kale said urgently, disconnecting from the neural interface. The station-wide systems are detecting multiple Vraxian infiltration teams, all converging on this section. "We won't survive another assault." Lyra nodded, quickly gathering their essential equipment. The emergency maintenance tunnels. They connect this section to the central core. "We can bypass most of their forces." "Lead the way," Kale said, directing his chair to follow her. "I've downloaded everything to my neural storage. If we reach command, we can not only warn them of the attack plan, but potentially disable the entire Vraxian fleet." They slipped through a concealed emergency access panel moments before reinforcement arrived. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dimly lit, designed for utility drones rather than humanoid traffic. Lyra moved with effortless grace despite the confined space, while Kale's chair required constant adjustments to navigate the tight passages. "Your chair," Lyra observed as they paused at a junction. "It seems too large for these tunnels." "Nova, compact configuration," Kale commanded. To Lyra's evident surprise, the wheelchair's structure began to reconfigure. Armrests folded inward, the chassis narrowed, and the entire profile of the chair became significantly smaller while maintaining its balance and functionality. "EDF engineering," Kale explained with a slight smile at her expression. "Adaptability is a human specialty." They continued through the tunnels, Lyra occasionally consulting a station schematic displayed on her wrist device, while Kale monitored security feeds through his neural implant. "Vraxian teams have locked down all primary routes to command," he reported. "They're systematically searching each sector. It won't take them long to figure out which access routes we're using." "Then we must move faster," Lyra replied simply, increasing her pace. They had covered nearly half the distance to the central core when Kale's proximity sensors detected movement ahead. "Wait," he whispered. "Something's coming." They froze, Lyra instantly dropping into a combat stance while Kale activated his chair's defensive systems. From around the corner appeared not Vraxians, but a maintenance drone, its optical sensors swiveling to identify them. Before either could react, the drone's communication array activated. "Lieutenant Vance, Lieutenant Zreth," came Commander Drayson's voice through the drone's speakers. "If you're receiving this, respond immediately." "Commander," Kale acknowledged, relief evident in his voice. "We've secured the data, but are cut off from command. Vraxian assault teams have breached the secure chamber and are hunting us throughout the station." "We know," Drayson replied grimly. "They've taken control of multiple sections, including most direct routes to command. We're operating on emergency protocols." "Sir," the data core contained their full battle plans, Kale reported quickly. "They're planning to use Nebula 7 as the first target in a sector-wide offensive. But there's more. I've extracted their fleet command codes. We can potentially disable their entire attacking force." A moment of silence followed. "That changes everything," Drayson finally said. "But you'll never reach command through the tunnels. There's a Vraxian team at Junction 17B directly in your path." "What are our alternatives?" Lyra asked. "There's only one," Drayson replied. "The central computer core. It has a direct neural interface capacity that Lieutenant Vance could use to upload the command codes to our defense systems. From there, we could broadcast a system-wide disruption to the Vraxian fleet." "The computer core is 2 levels down from our position," Kale noted, accessing the station schematic through his implant. "And heavily defended," Drayson added. "But it's your only chance. I'm uploading access codes to this drone. It will guide you there and provide whatever assistance its limited systems allow." "Understood," Kale acknowledged. "We'll make for the computer core." "One more thing," Drayson said, his voice taking on a grave tone. Our sensors detect that the Vraxian flagship has moved into position outside the station. They're preparing to deploy boarding parties through the main docking bays. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to happen in the next 15 minutes, or this station falls. The drone's lights blinked as it received the access codes from command. Follow me, it intoned in a mechanical voice, already moving down the tunnel. Kale and Lyra exchanged a look that needed no translation. The stakes had just risen exponentially. They followed the drone through a complex series of maintenance passages, descending through rarely used access shafts toward the heart of the station. The computer core is the most heavily shielded section of Nebula 7, Kale explained as they moved. Designed to continue functioning even if other areas are compromised. If I can establish a direct neural link to the main systems there, I can use the Vraxian command codes to send disruption signals to their entire fleet. A worthy plan, Lyra noted, but the core will be their primary target now that they know what we've discovered. That's counting on us reaching it conventionally, Kale replied with a grim smile. But there's a maintenance access that bypasses the main entrance. Rarely used, not even on most schematics. Lyra glanced at him with newfound appreciation. You studied the station thoroughly before your arrival. Always know your escape routes, Kale said. Old tactical officer habit. The drone led them to a narrow vertical shaft with maintenance rungs embedded in the wall. Lyra looked from the shaft to Kale's wheelchair, her expression concerned for the first time. I can't carry you and defend us simultaneously, she said, clearly calculating options. You won't have to, Kale assured her. Nova, vertical ascent mode. His wheelchair hummed as gravitational stabilizers activated. The wheels retracted, replaced by small directional thrusters. With a thought command through his neural interface, the chair began to rise smoothly up the shaft. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Your technology continues to surprise me. EDF doesn't send unprepared operatives to frontier stations, Kale replied, gesturing for her to follow. Even broken ones. They ascended the shaft with the drone floating alongside them, its sensors continuously scanning for threats. Emerging onto a narrow catwalk that overlooked the vast cylindrical chamber housing the central computer core, they paused to assess the situation. Below them, a squad of Vraxian soldiers had established defensive positions around the main entrance to the core. They were attempting to breach the heavily reinforced doors, but the station's automated defenses were holding them at bay, for now. The maintenance access is there, Kale whispered, indicating a small panel on the opposite side of the catwalk. It leads directly to the core's neural interface chamber. They will detect us crossing, Lyra observed, noting the open space they would need to traverse. Not if they're distracted, Kale replied. He turned to the maintenance drone. Can you create a diversion? The drone processed this request, lights blinking. Affirmative. This unit can initiate emergency protocols in adjacent systems. Warning. This will result in this unit's destruction. Do it, Kale ordered. On my mark. He prepared his chair's systems, switching to a stealth mode that minimized electromagnetic emissions and sound. Lyra drew her weapon, eyes fixed on the Vraxians below. Mark! The drone immediately shot forward, diving toward the Vraxian squad. As it fell, it activated every emergency system in its vicinity. Alarms blared, sprinkler systems engaged, and maintenance panels throughout the chamber burst open as dormant security protocols activated. The Vraxians reacted instantly, weapons tracking toward the cascade of unexpected threats. The drone itself detonated in a shower of sparks and components, temporarily blinding the enemies below. Kale and Lyra seized the moment, racing across the exposed catwalk. Lyra moved with Xylosian speed while Kale pushed his chair's systems to their limits. They reached the maintenance access panel just as the Vraxians realized they'd been deceived. Pulse fire erupted around them as Lyra slammed her palm against the access panel. It slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel. She dived through first, turning immediately to cover Kale as he maneuvered his chair into the confined space. The panel slid shut behind them just as concentrated weapon fire struck its surface. That won't hold them for long, Kale noted. already moving deeper into the maintenance tunnel. The neural interface chamber should be just ahead. The tunnel opened into a small, sterile white room dominated by an advanced neural interface station. The emergency backup system designed to allow direct human control of the station's core functions during critical situations. Perfect, Kale breathed, guiding his chair to the interface. Neural connection cables extended automatically, sensing his approach. I need to establish the link and transmit the disruption codes before they break through. It's going to take everything I've got. Lyra took up position facing the tunnel entrance, weapon ready. How long? 3 minutes to establish the connection. Another 2 to format and transmit the codes. Kale was already preparing his neural implants for the intensive connection. The moment I connect, they'll detect the activity and come running. Then I will give you 5 minutes, Lyra stated with simple certainty. Their eyes met briefly, his filled with determination, hers with a warrior's resolve. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the bond that had formed in their short time together. Lyra, Kale began, feeling he needed to say something more. Channeled to the communications array. He shaped the command signal, a complex mathematical construct designed to trigger a cascading system failure throughout the Vraxian fleet. Lyra was now fighting 3 Vraxians simultaneously, her movements a blur as she utilized every aspect of her Xylosian combat training. She had positioned herself directly in front of Kale's vulnerable form, becoming a living shield between him and their attackers. With a final neural command, Kale broadcast the signal. The transmission burst outward from Nebula 7 in a precisely modulated wave, targeting the specific frequencies used by Vraxian command systems. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, through the station's sensor feeds still connected to his consciousness, Kale witnessed the result. Throughout the Vraxian fleet, ships suddenly lost power. Weapons systems deactivated, shields collapsed, and propulsion systems initiated emergency shutdowns. The carefully orchestrated attack force was thrown into chaos. Inside the station, the Vraxian boarding parties experienced the same effect. Their networked armor systems, connected to the fleet's command structure, received the same contradictory emergency shutdown commands. Weapons failed, communication systems went silent, and tactical displays dissolved into static. The Vraxians attacking the computer core suddenly found their advanced armor locking up, power systems cycling into protection mode. Lyra didn't hesitate, capitalizing on their vulnerability with ruthless efficiency. Kale carefully extracted himself from the neural interface, his consciousness returning to his physical body. The scene that greeted him was one of carnage. Vraxian bodies littered the small chamber, and Lyra stood among them, bloodied but unbowed. Her uniform was torn in multiple places, revealing wounds she had simply ignored in the heat of battle. It worked, he told her, his voice hoarse from neural strain. Their entire fleet is disabled. The station security forces should be able to contain the boarding parties now. Lyra nodded, finally allowing herself to lean against a console as the adrenaline began to fade. You fought well, she said simply. We both did, Kale replied with a tired smile. Different battlefields, same war. The chamber door slid open, revealing Commander Drayson and a security team with weapons raised. They lowered them immediately upon recognizing the occupants. Lieutenant Vance, Lieutenant Zreth, Drayson acknowledged, surveying the scene with undisguised amazement. Status report. Mission accomplished, sir, Kale responded formally. Vraxian fleet neutralized. I've transmitted their complete battle plans to Alliance Command, and their command codes are now in our possession. The boarding parties are being rounded up throughout the station, Drayson confirmed. Their systems all failed simultaneously. He looked directly at Kale. You did this. We did this, Kale corrected, glancing at Lyra. I couldn't have reached the core without Lieutenant Zreth. Drayson nodded, a rare look of approval crossing his weathered features. Admiral Exor will want a full debriefing. But first, medical attention. He gestured to Lyra's wounds. I require minimal treatment, she stated dismissively. Don't let her fool you, Kale interjected. She took on at least a dozen Vraxians single-handedly. She needs medical attention as much as I need neural recovery protocols. Lyra gave him a look that might have been annoyance or might have been something else entirely. The human exaggerates. The humans saved the station, Drayson pointed out. As did you, Lieutenant Zareth. Report to medical, both of you. That's an order. Debriefing in 3 hours. As they were escorted from the computer core, emergency systems throughout the station were returning to normal operation. The immediate crisis had passed, though the implications of the averted Vraxian attack would reverberate throughout Alliance space for months to come. Medical Bay was chaotic with wounded from throughout the station, but their status as the heroes of the hour ensured immediate attention. Kale underwent neural recovery protocols while Lyra reluctantly allowed treatment for multiple plasma burns and lacerations. Your injuries are more severe than you acknowledged, a Kalanoy medic informed her. Several wounds would have incapacitated most species. Xylosians endure, Lyra replied simply. Across the medical bay, Kale was emerging from the neural recovery chamber, his mind refreshed, but his body still exhausted from the intense experience. A technician was examining his chair for battle damage. 3 pulse hits to the lateral stabilizers, the technician reported. Microfractionation in the left gravitational array. Could have collapsed mid-flight. You were lucky, Lieutenant. Not luck, Kale replied, glancing toward Lyra. Good protection. When they were finally cleared by medical, they found themselves with nearly an hour before the scheduled debriefing. By unspoken agreement, they made their way to an observation deck that offered a view of the disabled Vraxian fleet now surrounded by arriving Alliance vessels. They look less threatening now, Kale observed, watching a Vraxian dreadnought being towed away by Alliance cruisers. An enemy without power is still an enemy, Lyra noted, standing beside his chair. But yes, the threat is diminished. They were quiet for a moment, the events of the past day settling around them. The observation deck was otherwise empty, most personnel still engaged in station recovery operations. I misjudged you, Lyra finally said, her amber eyes meeting his directly. When we first met, I saw only what you could not do. Most people do, Kale replied without bitterness. I was wrong, she continued. Your combat in the digital realm was as real and as vital as my physical battle. Different domains, but equal valor. Coming from a Xylosian warrior, this admission was extraordinary. Their culture valued physical prowess above all else and rarely acknowledged other forms of strength. Thank you, Kale said simply, for both the recognition and for keeping me alive long enough to complete the mission. We kept each other alive, Lyra corrected. Your technology and intelligence complemented my combat skills. Together, we achieved what neither could alone. Kale smiled. Is it the famous Xylosian pragmatism I've heard about? Perhaps, she acknowledged with the slightest softening around her eyes that he had come to recognize as her version of a smile. Or perhaps it is simply truth. Before they could continue, Drayson's voice came over the station-wide communication system. Lieutenant Vance and Lieutenant Zareth report to command for debriefing. They made their way to the command deck, now restored to full functionality after the crisis. As they entered, something unexpected happened. The diverse array of officers present, humans, Kalanoy, Draxians, and others, stopped what they were doing and turned toward them. After a moment of silence, someone began to applaud. The gesture spread quickly until the entire command center was acknowledging them. Kale felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and pride. He glanced at Lyra, who stood rigidly beside him, clearly uncomfortable with the attention but maintaining her dignity. Admiral Exor and Commander Drayson waited for the impromptu recognition to subside before beckoning them forward. The debriefing was thorough but efficient, focusing on the technical details of the Vraxian plans and the method Kale had used to disable their fleet. The Alliance owes you both a debt of gratitude, Admiral Exor concluded, his neural patterns displaying what Kale recognized as sincere appreciation. Your actions not only saved Nebula 7, but provided us with intelligence that will reshape our strategic position in this sector. What happens now? Kale asked. The Vraxians have been dealt a significant blow, Drayson replied. Their fleet is neutralized, and we've captured enough of their personnel to ensure they'll be occupied with recovery for some time. But they'll be back, eventually, with new encryption and new tactics. Which is why, Admiral Exor interjected, we are establishing a permanent joint intelligence unit here on Nebula 7. Its purpose will be to analyze Vraxian and other potential threat data, develop countermeasures, and coordinate with alliance forces throughout the sector. The Admiral's neural patterns shifted to what Kale recognized as formal address configuration. Lieutenant Vance, in recognition of your exceptional service and unique capabilities, you are hereby promoted to the rank of commander and appointed as the head of this new unit, effective immediately. Kale blinked in surprise. Sir, I'm honored, but this is not open for discussion, Commander, Exor stated firmly. Your demonstrated abilities are precisely what this position requires. And Lieutenant Zreth, the Admiral continued, turning to Lyra. Admiral C.H. Thon has reviewed your actions during this crisis and has authorized me to offer you a choice. You may return to regular Zylosian security forces with a commendation and promotion, or you may accept a permanent assignment as security chief for the new Joint Intelligence Unit, working directly with Commander Vance. Lyra's expression remained neutral, but Kale noticed a slight shift in her posture. She glanced briefly in his direction before responding. I believe my skills would be best utilized in the Joint Intelligence Unit, she stated formally. The combination of our different capabilities has proven effective. Indeed it has, Admiral Exor agreed, neural patterns displaying satisfaction. Very well. You will both receive your official orders within the hour. Dismissed. As they left the command center, Kale couldn't help but notice the changed attitudes of those they passed. The whispers and stares followed them still, but they were different now. Respectful, even admiring. No one called him half-human or brain in a box. Instead, officers of various species nodded acknowledgement or offered quiet congratulations. Quite a change from yesterday, Kale observed as they entered the lift. Perceptions shift when reality contradicts them forcefully enough, Lyra replied. You have proven your capability beyond any doubt. We proved it, Kale corrected. I wouldn't be here without you. The lift doors closed, leaving them in momentary privacy. Did you accept the position because you actually want it? Kale asked, genuinely curious. Or was it Zylosian duty speaking? Lyra considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. Initially, I viewed our pairing as a burden, an assignment beneath my training. She met his eyes directly. I was incorrect. Working with you has expanded my understanding of combat, of capability, of strength. That doesn't exactly answer my question, Kale noted with a small smile. I accepted because I believe we function well as a unit, she stated simply. And because there is more I wish to learn from you about this neural combat of yours. I could teach you the basics, Kale offered. Zylosians are compatible with simplified neural interfaces. You'd be formidable. As you are formidable in your domain, she acknowledged. The lift doors opened to the officer's deck. Perhaps we can each learn from the other's strengths. I'd like that, Kale agreed, following her into the corridor. They stopped outside his quarters, where a maintenance crew had just finished repairing damage from the Vraxian incursion. The head technician nodded respectfully to them both before departing with his team. Rest well, Commander, Lyra said formally. Tomorrow brings new challenges. And new opportunities, Kale added. Security Chief. A hint of that almost smile touched her lips. Indeed, as she turned to leave, Kale called after her. Lyra. She paused, looking back. Thank you for seeing me. Not just the chair. She considered this for a moment. I see a warrior, she said simply. The domain of battle is irrelevant. The courage to face it is what matters. Coming from a Zylosian, there could be no higher acknowledgement. Kale nodded, understanding the significance of her words. As he entered his quarters, Kale reflected on the extraordinary events of the past 48 hours. He had arrived at Nebula 7 as an outsider, defined by his limitations in the eyes of others. Now, he had proven his true capabilities, not despite his condition, but in many ways because of it. The neural interface skills he had developed after his injury had saved the station and potentially altered the course of an interstellar conflict. But perhaps more significantly, he had gained something he hadn't expected: respect from a culture that prized physical prowess above all else. Lyra Zreth, a Xylosian warrior, had seen beyond his paralyzed legs to recognize the warrior within. And in doing so, perhaps she had begun to change her own culture's perceptions, just as he had changed the perceptions of those aboard Nebula 7. Neural assist functioning at optimal levels, Commander. Nova's familiar voice informed him as he prepared for much-needed rest. Systems recalibrated and ready for tomorrow's duties. Thanks, Nova, Kale replied with a tired smile. I think we're both going to like it here after all. Through his viewport, he could see the stars of this frontier sector, the same stars that had seemed so indifferent to his arrival days ago. Now, they witnessed the beginning of something new, a partnership of different strengths, a recognition that capability came in many forms, and perhaps the start of a deeper understanding between two individuals from vastly different worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as Lyra had said. But Cale Vance, commander of the Joint Intelligence Unit, was ready to face them. Not despite being mocked, not despite being paraplegic, but as exactly who he was, a warrior in his own right, with capabilities that had finally been recognized for their true worth.